up? Tyson France with Motion Revolver here. Thanks a lot for purchasing the Election Night project. We'll dive right in here to show you how to customize it. Inside the project folder, there are three folders, 1, 2, and 3. The import media folder is where you import anything you're going to use in the project, whether it's images, video, graphics, logos, audio, whatever it is you're going to add to the project. Import it into this folder so that you know where to find it when you need it. Moving on to folders 2 and 3, just to kind of show you, this is the heart of the project. The intro animation, there are steps inside of here that we follow to customize the intro animation only. And then step 3 is the supplementals folder where we customize all of the supplemental graphics, which we will get to in just a bit. But back to the intro animation, we open that up and we have steps 1 through 6 here, so we'll just follow along. If we open up step 1, the intro background, we customize that here. And all we really need to do here is customize the look of the background, which sort of changes the entire look of the open. So if we don't like this blue background and say, for example, we wanted something like a red background, we could even do gradients here. We could do like a red to blue gradient or something like that. But like a dark red here. But yeah, so we can change the overall look of the open by simply customizing the color of the background. But that's really all we need to customize here in this intro background composition. Real quick note, if you don't already have your effects control window open, I suggest that you open this window. It just makes everything a lot easier to customize throughout the project. And you can do that by going to Window and Effects Controls and making sure this little check mark is activated here. It just makes everything a lot easier. Moving on to step 2, which is where we customize the intro title. We have a check mark composition here, and this is just a check mark that quickly animates on. If we wanted to change the color of the check mark, we could do that here just by altering these two colors. Very simple. And then the intro title, which, as you can see, animates on here through several layers. If I preview the animation and show you what this looks like. So, we can adjust timing, play with the duration of things here just by messing with these layers. These bottom two layers here are live customizable text layers. And I'm using a font called Rajani, which is a free font that you can download, which I've provided the link for. So feel free to go and grab that font if you like the look of this one. But you can use any font you want. The only restriction is I recommend that you keep the title within the size of this composition. So don't change the size of this comp because this logo is used throughout the project. And if you change the size of the comp, it might sort of mess up the placement of the logo. But we could change this text, say, instead of election night, if we wanted it to say like election 2016 or something like that, we can change the size if we want, and the weight if we wanted like a light look. But if we need to change the position, I actually recommend you change the anchor point. So we do that by highlighting the layer and hitting the A key, and then we can sort of drag these markers around or the attributes around to sort of move the element around rather than changing the position, which would sort of mess up the animation. But we'll revert that back to election night. So that's your customizable text. Moving on to step 3, inserting the audio. Obviously, there's nothing in here right now because I don't have the soundtrack imported, but this is a 10-second long composition. The intro, I believe, resolves around 5 or 6 seconds, so it's a very short open, so you want to make sure that you select a track that will work with that duration. Step 4, customizing the intro text. Now, this is the text that shows up in the first few scenes of the intro. So right now we have the word election that sort of goes across, and then the word night, and then in the third scene we sort of see both words large across the screen. So word 1 is election and word 2 is night. So anything that we change these words to, like for example, if we wanted this to be 2016 again instead of night, go back here to our main open, and there we go. Now we have a different open, election 2016 instead of election night. And as you can see, there's also sort of hopefully you can see this. I'll zoom in. You can see there's also a stroked version, like a ghosted outline version of each word. So election and then 2016. So anything that you update these two words to, this will be reflected throughout automatically. Zoom back out here. All right. On these words, there's also a ramp effect applied. So if we hit the E key to show the ramp effect or have our effects control windows open, we can also change the color of the text here as well. So this can sort of be customized along with our background. All right. Step 5 is where we edit the scenes. So if we open up scene 1 and kind of see what's going on here, it just sort of slowly animates across the screen. There's not a ton, I guess, to customize in here other than maybe the position of these words. So as you can see, this is animated across 2 position keyframes. So if we wanted this to slide a little bit further, we just position our playhead on top of the final keyframe here, and then just move the word further down, and it's just going to animate a little bit further along. So we can control the speed and the direction of the graphics with those keyframes right there. Scene 2 is essentially the same thing. It's set up in the same way. On this word layer, the text sort of animates across the screen just like that. And then scene 3, same thing, just with an extra text layer. And then scene 6, or I'm sorry, step 6 is where we compile everything. So everything's sort of timed out nicely to the soundtrack that I used in the preview video. So if you like that track, please go ahead and use the links to download that and use it. I think it's a fantastic song for this style and this genre. But as we can see, the logo resolves. There's a nice light burst, and then we have our title resolve across the screen there. And then at the end, there is a star layer which keys out footage. So if we were to, or if we wanted to use this over footage, we either need to pre-render this or create a new composition. Because if we place an image under this, because this is in silhouette alpha mode, it's going to cut out the image below it as well. So I don't think I have any images imported here. Okay, so I've imported an image to kind of show you why you can't just drop an image into here and have it work, because it would be keyed out by, well, now we have, hold on one second here. Just need to re-import this again. It is not a JPEG sequence. Okay. So because this star is cutting out the background, it's also going to cut out the image below it. So what we need to do if we want to render this as an open to a show is create maybe like an intro composition, make it as long as we need it. In this case, I'll just make it 30 seconds long. And then we'll just drop our election night intro into this new comp that we just created, along with our footage or our image that we're going to key to. And I'll just sort of show you what this looks like. Let's see, we'll pre-render it. And as the open transitions away, we cut to the footage underneath for the end of the open. So if this was the beginning of our show, obviously we could, be transitioning to an on-studio set or whatever it is that we're creating. So that's how we would work with the open. But I'll go ahead and delete that intro. And then, okay, actually, just realized that was the final step, and that's essentially the process of customizing the intro animation. To customize the supplementals, please open the supplementals tutorial. Alright, moving on to the supplementals, we'll show you how to customize this group of elements. We twirl open the supplementals folder here, and one of the first things we want to do is open up the customization folder here, which has 2 other elements inside. One is the candidates, and one is the supplemental global appearance. So there's a few elements in this folder: candidate headshots, candidate names, for Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. the three major parties that you might want to use in the project. So I have imported a few headshots here and cut out the subject from the background using the pen tool. If you don't know how to cut out a subject from the background, I've included a tutorial on how to cut out images from the background. So navigate to the tutorials folder and watch that tutorial on how to accomplish cutting this out. You don't have to use cutout images. You can also use full frame images if you wish. You don't have to cut the subject out, although it does look a lot better with the subject cut out in this design. You'll lose a few design features if you don't cut the subject out from the background, but it is possible just to go with a full frame if you wish. So this is the Democratic candidate headshot, and then the Democratic candidate name. What we have here is a live customizable layer, the Rajani font, which is a free font downloadable on fontsquirrel.com. There's a link in the project, so if you like the font, go ahead and download it and use it. So we can customize this to be whatever. I just made up a last name with the Democratic marker here. You could, for example, go with like a full name like that, or you could just go with the last name without the marker at all. So whatever you want this to be, you can change it to whatever. The rest of these are the same. The independent candidate, same thing, cutout headshot, and then last name, and then the Republican headshot with his last name as well. So that's basically the candidates. Moving on to the global supplemental appearance. What we've done here is you could customize the background of all the supplementals simply by changing this background color. And I have a slightly different gradient in here than I did in the preview. I like this one actually a lot better. I sort of wish I would have gone with this in the preview, but we can change this color to whatever we want, and it updates the background, as you can see. We could even go with like a monotone look if we wish. Something like that, which I think looks pretty cool. But we're going to revert back to what we had here originally. So that's how you update the background, which would be reflected throughout the rest of the supplemental package. And then as far as changing, we could also change the star color in the background, which is currently white. You just click on the map white 2 key, and we'll just change this to something that would be pretty obvious to see. Give this a green tint, which changes the stars, the color of the stars to have a green tint. So you can customize that as well. Now, as far as these candidate, or I should say political party swatches on the left here, any color that you change these to will be also reflected throughout the supplemental package. So if you wanted, say, for example, a more vibrant blue for the Democrats, click on the swatch, go up here to the tint, and then make it a more saturated blue, darker blue color. And then watch this Blair headshot here to see the color change. So you can see it's a much darker, more saturated blue. Same thing for red if we wanted the Republican red to be like a darker red. We can do that as well, and then it updates. So just keep in mind, anything that you change in here is going to be reflected throughout the entire project. All right. Moving on to the actual elements themselves, there's 4 customizable backgrounds to choose from. So you could use these as, you could actually render these out if you wish to use as backgrounds in other projects. We're actually going to save election results for last, since that's a little bit more involved. But the lower thirds, there's a 1-line, 2-line, 3-line, basic name lower third, and then the results screen. We'll just open up this 1 line, and as you can see, there's a editable live text layer here. We can double click on that and change the name to pretty much whatever we want. If we open up the 1-line build composition here, you can also see we could change the background. If we don't like this background, we could use a different background. Background 3 or background 2 or background 1, whichever background we think looks best in this lower third, we can change it. Same thing with the 2-line. It's basically the same thing as the 1-line, except it has an extra text layer. Again, we could change the background here as well to anything we want. All right. 3 line, same concept, just has an additional bar here at the bottom. And then the name bar, which is basically just a shorter version with just a name. And then the candidate results, which will take a second to load because it features the map, the customizable voting map, which usually takes a second to load because it's got quite a few layers going on. But as you can see, we can change the background here as well, kind of like that version 2 since it works well with the gradient. But we have our map, which we will cover in just a second. And then we have customizable percentage layers in here. So say, for example, the Democrats up maybe 54% to 46%, something like that. We can change those stats right there. Another thing that needs to be mentioned in all of the lower thirds, the duration is customizable. It's currently set up to play for about 18 seconds, but let's say, for example, you only want the lower third to be on the screen for 5 seconds. All we need to do is highlight these 2 red layers here, position our playhead where we want it, and then drag both layers back to where it says out. And now at 5 seconds, it will animate off the screen. And that's the case for all of these lower thirds. Just drag these 2 top layers. The lower third candidate results a little bit different. This top control layer, you just highlight the layer, hit the U key to show the keyframes, and then you would select these 2 keyframes on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right, and drag those back to wherever you want, and that's where it will animate off of the screen. All right. So we'll move on to side panels, which again is basically straightforward. Again, we have a left and a right. This is the left version. We can again change the background to anything we want. And we can change the content by opening up this lower third content. We can add images, text, video, anything we want as long as it sits within this box and is within title safe. That's important. And then right side, same thing. We can change the background if we want. And the duration, or I'm sorry, the content. We could add anything we want here. And then we can also change the duration by clicking on this edge, or this actually is the control layer. We can click on this control layer and again select the keyframes here and move this to any point we want, and now it will animate off at 6 seconds. And there we go. Revert back to the original there. Okay, that's the side panels. Moving on to the split screens. Essentially the same concept. This is a full split screen with full videos on each side and then just kind of a bar in the middle. So we would add our content to the split screen full left and split screen full right to show video or whatever content we want to display on either side. The windows, same exact concept again. We can change the background if we want. And then split screen window left and split screen window right. We can add our content to these and they will play within those 2 windows. All right, the transitions. Transition 1 will kind of show how this works here. Let's see, we'll go with this and this. So this transition here, the split point is at 2 seconds. So what we have here is, I just placed 2 images in to kind of show how the transition works, to pretend this is video. So transition comes in, and then at 2 seconds it's full frame, and then transitions to the next image. So I'll preview this here, show you what it looks like. The mat comes in over the footage. Then at the 2 second mark, we have a full frame. And it begins to animate off to the next image source. And there we go. All right. So that's transition 1. And then transition 2 works in the exact same way. It's just a little bit different on the timing. Instead of at 2 seconds, this splits at 1 second and 10 frames. So we'll preview that as well, show you how it works. So the star mat comes on and then wipes away. So it's a little bit quicker of a transition. And you can add sound effects to this if you wish. It would be pretty cool if you added sound effects. Also, if you open up the transition background, you can change the background here if you want to go with something different. Adds a different look to it. But we'll delete that. And that's the transitions. Okay, now moving on to the election results, which is sort of a little bit more involved. First, we'll go to our maps. And what we'll do is open up our vote map customization. And all we need to do is to change these states. So say, for example, we wanted Pennsylvania to actually be a Democratic state rather than a Republican state. So all we do is highlight the little Pennsylvania swatch here on the right-hand side, go up to Map Black 2, use our little color swatch, and then hover over the little swatch up here at the top, and now it's a blue state rather than a red state. And say, for example, if we wanted Florida to be a red state, again, we just highlight the Florida tab and then select one of our states here on the right or the swatch above, and we can customize all of these states accordingly. Now, other things that we need to customize as far as maps go, we have two other elements in here, the electoral results and the popular results. The electoral results are, obviously, you need 270 electoral votes to win the nomination. So let's say, for example, the Democrats have 240 and the Republicans have, I don't know, 108 or something like that. So these are customizable text layers. We can also, if we're not showing the independent party, we can turn that off here. And then this bar is sort of customizable. If you want to show a difference in proportion, you can double click on this mask and sort of make it a little bit bigger. Now, I didn't want to make this automatically update when you change the number because in some cases you might not want the bar to actually move. You might just want this to stay kind of evenly split. This also works the other way. Let's say 240 for Republicans, 108 for Democrats. We can just shrink the Democratic line. And now we have a greater proportion for the Republicans versus the Democrats. So we can visually represent a greater portion of the votes there. But we will revert those back to the original. All right. And then same thing with the popular vote. Each is just a percentage, basically. So, you know, we can update this to be whatever. And then the candidates, which is fairly important. We'll open up the Democratic candidate here. So everything that we've customized up to this point, the headshot, the color of the candidate, all that stuff is now reflected in this headshot. And all we need to do now is update the voting information. So let's say, for example, our Democratic candidate is currently getting 42% of the vote. And she has, let's say, I don't know, 36,101,000 votes, something like that. So this is all customizable. And this reflects for each of the candidates. So we can change all of that. So once we have our candidates customized, look and see here, we have several elements to work with. We have a screen that shows one candidate alone, and a screen that shows one candidate plus a map. So if you open up the one candidate, we see it animates onto the screen. We'll sort of preview this here so you know what it looks like. So that's our singular candidate screen with nothing else on it. It's just one candidate. Now we're currently showing our Republican candidate. We can turn this off and do a Democratic or independent, and the position and scale of these will be fixed in the main version. I'm sort of still working through a few bugs here. But that's how you would customize that. And then the one candidate plus map. We'll show you how that looks. We'll preview the animation. So the map comes onto the screen. And the candidate animates on as well. And I think everything is finished animating by about 2 seconds. All right, and we'll preview that. So that's what that looks like. Now, this is currently showing the popular vote map. We can change that by going down here, there will actually be another vote map in here. We'll change it. So this was currently showing the popular vote. There's also an electoral option. We can just switch that on. And there we go. We have to switch this out for that. All right. Okay, so you have either the option of showing the electoral votes or the popular votes. And then you can also customize the background. You can choose whichever background you want to use. If you like that better, or say that one. That one's pretty cool. And then there's also the customizable text layer up here for the title. Customizable title. There we go. So those are essentially all of the customizable elements within each candidate screen. These are all essentially the same, so I won't go too far into them. But for example, here's the 2 candidate, and then the 3 candidate plus 3 candidate map. And then the election results map, the electoral votes, and then the popular votes as well. So those are all of the election result elements. And I believe that covers pretty much all of the supplementals. I don't think I missed anything, but as always, if you have any comments or questions or concerns, please feel free to contact us through motionrevolver.com or through our Video Hive profile page. There's an email form at the bottom. Once again, thank you so much for purchasing the Election Night project. I'm Tyson France, and good luck with your project. Hey, what's up? Tyson France from Motion Revolver here with a quick tutorial to show you how to cut out the background from an image to, say, cut out a headshot of somebody or cut someone out of a photo to remove the background and make it transparent so that it can be placed over other footage and graphics. So what I've done is I've imported a headshot image here, and what I'm going to do is create a new composition with this image, and I'm just going to kind of drag it down here to create a new comp. And so we have a new comp here, and we'll zoom in a little bit. And this is really simple. If you've ever used Photoshop before to cut out an image, it's essentially the same situation. After Effects isn't quite as powerful as Photoshop is, but After Effects, if you need to cut out an image from After Effects, it's actually kind of nice to use After Effects because the mask that you create is therefore editable in case it needs to be animated or updated. You don't have to jump back into Photoshop to fix anything. It's all self-contained within After Effects. But anyway, so I have this headshot composition opened, and I have the layer highlighted. And what I'm going to do is go up to the pen tool, and I'm going to click that. You can also hit the G key to activate the pen tool. And as you can see, we have our little pen activated here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in pretty far here. And all I'm doing is hitting Command and the plus sign to zoom in really close to the image. You could also use this little drop-down menu here to zoom in real far, depending on how detailed you need to get with your selection. But another way to make more real estate on your, within your interface so that you can see more of the image is to hit the F key. I'm sorry, not the F key. It's the tilde key. It's the tilde key, which is the little, key next to the 1 on the keyboard, usually to the left of the 1. It's a little squiggly mark thing. And if you press the tilde key, it will basically make whatever window you have highlighted the largest window within the screen. So if I click in the composition or in the project window here and I hit the tilde key, it's going to open that up. If I hit the composition and the tilde key, it'll show the timeline larger. But if I go into the comp window and I hit the tilde key, that removes everything else so that I can kind of see what I'm doing here more. And we'll hit the G key again to activate our pen tool. And all we have to do is click and drag points here. So if I click and add another point, I then get these little anchor points here and adjustment arms so that I can sort of, draw a nice selection here. Now, again, depending on how perfect you need to be with your selection, you might want to take your time, but all I'm doing here is just using the pen tool to go around and trace around the part that I need to be cut out. And there's a few other options that I'll quickly cover here once I'm done tracing this gentleman's head. Some options include changing the mask color so that if you say, for example, you have more than one mask on a layer, you can change the color so you can see the different masks better. And I'll also quickly cover the masking modes so that you can sort of see how we can use multiple masks on a layer to create a more complex selection. So I'm just going to finish this up real quick. Won't worry about being too perfect with it. Just kind of click outside the window here to sort of close this off. Now, as you can see, if we zoom out, we'll hit the tilde key to revert back to our original interface. We have our mask around the subject that we needed to be removed. Now, you could go in here and you can see, okay, we missed a few spots, like the background sort of shows through here, so we can sort of go back in there and click and drag these little anchor points around and adjust things so that the selection looks a little bit better. But that's basically how we cut out an image. Now, just to cover a few other options here, and you can see I missed on this side too, but we weren't being too careful with our selection there. Anyway, if we go to the layer and hit the M key to show the mask, and we twirl open this mask attribute here, there's a few other options. One here is the mask feather. So we could crank this up to create sort of a ghosted edge around the image. So now you can see, we can sort of see through you know, the edges of our subject, which in some cases this may be helpful. You can also expand the mask by adjusting the expansion here down at the bottom. As you can see, we are increasing the border around the selection that we've created. We can also, you know, bring that in to sort of create sort of a wipe on effect if that's sort of what we're going for. And all of these attributes, I should mention, are also animatable, so you can animate them. There's the opacity, so we're basically just lowering the opacity of whatever we've cut out. We'll revert this back to 0. As I was saying, the color, we can change the color of our mask. This is kind of a bright yellow, so if we say, for example, needed to, I don't know, if we were going to make this guy talk or animate his eyes or whatever the case may be, and we needed to create another mask within here, let's say we just needed to mask his eye out. We'll just do a quick selection here. As you can see, After Effects automatically updates the color of the mask, but sometimes it'll create a color that you can't really see very well on top of the footage. Like, for example, it might, this is kind of an extreme example, but it might create a mask that's very close to the color of the image underneath. Like, for example, I just made this new mask the same color as this man's skin, so it's very hard to see. So we can change that to whatever we need, maybe something a little bit brighter. Let's see, why don't we go with like a bright green? There we go. Now we can see it really well. So we added this mask, but it didn't really do anything because this mask is in add mode. So if we change the mode to say subtract, which is going to subtract this mask from whatever it's currently sitting on, now we've cut this man's eye out. So we can maybe place a new eye in here or whatever we wanted to do with this image. There's a few other modes in here, some of which I've actually never personally used in my professional career. I usually use add, subtract, and intersect more than anything. But this is just kind of showing you that we can have multiple masks on a layer. And let's see, let's cut this out as well. And again, that's an add. Go to subtract. There we go. Now we have both eyes cut out, and we can create something pretty creepy there. So yeah, there's also an inverted option. I'm going to delete those two masks. If we click the inverted option, now what we've done is we have cut out the subject and we've left the background. So that's another thing that we can do with these masks. But I think that pretty much covers everything that we needed to cover as far as using the pen tool to cut out an image. As you can see, it's very similar to the way it works in Photoshop, but I personally, if I ever need to cut out an image for After Effects, unless it has a really complicated background or there's a lot of wispy hair that I need to retain within the image, I like to use After Effects to cut out images, because as I mentioned before, it's easier to come in here and edit a mask, or you know, reuse the mask to kind of invert it if I needed the background, rather than having to jump back into Photoshop or create multiple versions of files, or, you know, multi-layered files that kind of sort of complicate things. This is just a more you know, using the pen tool to create a mask in After Effects is I should say a less destructive way of working with images. But I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to contact us, and good luck with your project.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.